serve the community. So, if you notice a theme about a lot of these openings and changes, they're happening here in Canyon Country. Because as the city has grown, the center of our city really is kind of here now, the geographical center. In late 2019, we opened up our new senior center. There on, over in Canyon Country as well. We opened our first all-inclusive play structure at Canyon Country Park. That is an amazing thing. And we're actually going to be replicating that at West Creek Park as well on the other side of town. And again, something that is just a great addition to our community, and again, that you don't see in other cities and other parts of the county. So still a lot of progress, and I should mention, Skyline Ranch Road just opened. I got punched through, so again, lots of transition happening, and we hope that we can continue along that progress. Just a couple things also to talk about. The census came out, and we're getting the final numbers there. But Santa Clarita, the city of Santa Clarita, population is now about 230,000 people within the city. That keeps us as the third largest city in LA County. That's behind Los Angeles, obviously, and then Long Beach. And Santa Clarita would be third. Obviously, when you build in the valley as a whole, some of the unincorporated areas, obviously the Stevenson Ranch, Soros, Castaic, pushing closer to 300,000 within the Santa Clarita Valley as a whole. So obviously, we continue to grow with the New Hall Ranch project starting to go vertical. You've got Tahoe Ranch, Centennial Ranch, still in the development phase. And you may or may not have noticed that LA Metro is going to hold a meeting this week to talk about the beginning of the improvements of the I-5 basically from Parker Road to the 514. So that'll be great for the next 4 years. We'll all love that. But again, that is coming down, and we're going to probably start seeing that construction early in 2022, and those long-term improvements to try to accommodate that extra growth within the valley. So we're going to continue to see those changes, those transitions that go along with it. But Santa Clarita as a city, we are still continually ranked amongst the most fiscally sound communities. Our budget, the reason why we were able to acquire the skating facility, the Cube, was because we had a stable budget. Even during the pandemic, when we were all hit and revenues were declining, we were still strong enough fiscally that we could acquire a facility and transition it into one of the best in the county. And that's something that we always are going to take pride on and make sure that we are disciplined with our fiscal account of our spending. Speaking of that, another project that is being funded for this year is we're going to add 4 new sports fields at Central Park. So, and those are going to be the multi-use fields that kind of for soccer, football, lacrosse, cricket is there as well. So that's going to lead to some changes at the cross-country course. Any of you that have kids that run cross-country, whether it be Warriors or Storm or the high schools, that'll get redesigned. Also, it's going to impact our golf course, Steve, I know that. And that'll get redesigned as well as part of the build out. So if you go to Central Park, it's just you go all the way to the kind of roundabout at the end, that's where you'll see 4 new fields will be built and added there to accommodate the need. And those, again, just like the cube, they will be at capacity the day they open. There's just that need, for those active park facilities. So looking to continue to transition on that. And then, lastly, I just wanted to say, something just that we're going to be talking about at the city council meeting tonight. Talking just a little bit of politics. As I mentioned before, the census came out, and part of the census requires what's called redistricting. So every state legislative seat, every congressional seat, all of those district boundaries get redrawn every 10 years to accommodate for the growth and the transition and the movement of population. So for California, for example, you will always have 80 members of the state assembly and 40 members of the Senate. So you basically take the state's population, divide it by 40, divide it by 80, that's how you get your districts, and you map them out. The state's population is just about 40 million. Each state senator represents about 1 million people now in California, which is pretty shocking, really. And just to kind of give you an idea, when I was elected to the assembly in 2006, assembly districts were about 375,000. They're now 500,000, statewide, and just that, the rapid growth of the state. So that's going to change, whereas in Congress, it's a little bit different. So Congress, it's set up that there are 435 members of the House of Representatives, period. So then you divide the nation's population around that. So for this year, California, for the first time in our history, is actually losing a member of Congress. So there'll be 1 fewer congressional district in California than there was previously due to population shifts and growths, where you'll see here, Texas has picked up 2, Florida's picked up 2. What am I going to do?
Who is that unmasked man?
So you're going to see a change in California, and likely LA County, because that's where the population loss was really seen in California. And so that could certainly impact Santa Clarita and our district on the federal level. But I want to talk about a little bit more locally. Because if you read the paper or you saw online, last week the city received a note from an attorney that has said if the city doesn't vote to go to city council districts within the next, by the end of the year, we're gonna be sued and forced to go into districts. So just to give you a little history, when the city was formed in 1987, the voters decided they wanted 2 things. One, for the city to be what's called at large. So even though I live in Happy Valley, I represent the entire city. I don't have a little district. Or, Councilmember Gibbs, who lives up by Plum Canyon, we all represent the entire city. Whereas in the city of Los Angeles, you have districts, and people represent certain areas. The other thing the voters decided is they did not want a directly elected mayor. So that's why we have kind of our rotational mayoral system, as opposed to a directly elected mayor like in Simi Valley or some other cities. So what has happened since 2012, since the last redistricting? A lot of cities or jurisdictions were sued under the Voting Rights Act to go into districts. The claim was that at-large districts were disenfranchising the minority voters in Santa Clarita, to be more specifically Latino voters, since that's the largest minority population in the city. So we're at a point that the council's going to have to decide, whether or not there is a move to change and to go into the districts. Every other jurisdiction in the city has districts, whether it be water board, all the school boards are districts. The city's the only agency that is still at large. So at some point in 2022, we're going to have to make a decision, whether or not we are going to stay at large or are we going to move to districts.
So that is separated into like in country?
Correct. So what you would do, so theoretically, the idea would be, simply you take the city's population, all this rounded up because I'm easier with math that way, right? 250,000 people, you take 5 districts, each one, is split into 50,000 person districts. However, the lawsuit is intended to create one majority-minority district, if you will. So it would be to try to establish a district that would be 50% Latino. Which, to do that in Santa Clarita, is very difficult, because when you look at our demographics, the city is pretty homogeneous. Which is what you want. You don't want just one pocket of a neighborhood to be one ethnicity. You like it to be distributed like we have here in Santa Clarita. So in order to get to a majority-minority district, you then get into the issue of what's the whole, where it's a very creative district, so then that would actually split up a Newhall, King Country district, like you wouldn't have an all Newhall district, because you have to take parts of Newhall, circle it up Sierra Highway to get parts of Canyon Country to get that 50%. And then the irony of it is, Mayor Miranda, first Latino mayor in Santa Clarita, lives in Valencia. So the map that the attorney proposed has Mayor Miranda, myself, and Councilmember McLean all in the same district, which is 61% white. So the chances are, by doing the districts, you could end up having what happened in the Hart district. When the Hart School District went to districts instead of at large, what happened is the only Hispanic member of the board lost her seat. So the intent was to create more Latino districts, but then it ended up putting the one Latino member on the board out of office. And that's what could happen here if we go to districts. So it's just something that, again, I recognize that I served in a circumstance with districts when I was in the legislature. All of our other agencies are in districts, and we're still at large. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. It's just a matter of whether the courts are going to decide that you have to do it or not. What we're watching is the city of Santa Monica was in a similar situation. They were sued. They contested the lawsuit and actually won at the lower court. And the lower court said, no, you don't have to go to districts. So that's been appealed to the California State Supreme Court. And I imagine when they finally rule at the Supreme Court, that'll kind of dictate what happens for cities like Santa Clarita or other agencies that are still in the at-large system. So, again, it's just something that I wanted that's happening. We're taking it up tonight a little bit to kind of review the letter from the attorney, who, again, is from the Bay Area, let me point out, and is representing Santa Clarita residents allegedly, but never disclosed who the who the plaintiffs are. The city went through this in 2015. They were sued about on voting rights, actually settled with the attorney, and there were, the main change was it changed the election date. Our city council, some of the old timers will remember our city council elections were usually held in April. Kind of a random election day, standalone election. You get 4,000 votes, you can get elected to the city council. As part of the settlement, they changed the election date and combined it with the general election of November. And now, the benefit of that is you have a much higher turnout. But then you also have a less, I don't want to say educated, but more people are voting that don't know anything about their city. And so that changes it a little bit before. You had the April elections and it was small, but every person there knew about the city. They were involved. They knew the voter. They knew the issues. I as a candidate during that time, I knew pretty much every person that was going to vote in the city council elections, and I could reach out to them. Remember my very first, the 2000 election, the Sunday before election day, we hit every single vote that night. By that night, I'm like, well, what am I going to do? What do I do for the next day and a half? I just called everybody. We hit every vote. Whereas now, you're tied to a presidential election. It was 80% voter turnout. In the last election, I ended up, getting 50,000 votes, instead of 5,000. I mean, it's my dad got elected to the city council in 1994, literally with like 3,400 votes. And so it's just, it changes. And so that was something that we had settled before, but now a different attorney has come to sue the city about testimony. So again, some of it that's going to have to be decided before the 2022 elections. We've got some time, but that's on our agenda tonight. So I know I've talked a little bit. I'd love to take questions. I know that's make it a little bit easier, a little bit more interactive before I get the hook. But I'd love to, yeah.
Are the districts required to be contiguous? Is that why they're shaping through the valley?
Yeah, so you would just kind of, you would just take 5 districts and you just kind of draw the maps that are, within, the issue. So I'll give you a little, again, I could split the atom if I didn't have all this other stuff in my head, but gerrymandering. So gerrymandering comes from the state of Massachusetts, 1812. The Governor Jerry approved the redistricting, and one of the districts looked like a salamander. And so hence the name gerrymander. So, anyways, like I said, I can split the atom. Steve, I'll get you in a second, right?
The community west of Magic Mountain is looking pretty big. I mean, it actually dwarfs Magic Mountain, which growing up, I thought was one of the biggest things around. All that traffic that's going to come into the city, is there any plans of annexing that area? Or is that under an area of influence for the city? And how are we going to mitigate that traffic?
That, the Newell Ranch has always been an issue when it was first proposed 20 years ago. And the discussion about annexation and spheres of influence have always been part of that. The issue with annexation, if you remember, the original city boundaries was the entire Santa Clarita Valley. But the largest landholder at the time, Land and Farm, was not too keen on cityhood. And, because, I get it from a business standpoint, the county's board of supervisors, you just got to worry about one person. You got to keep, Mike Antonovich happy, and you're good. But you have become a city, you got 5 new people, make land use decisions, it changes. So, continue to get pared down to the west, the 514 is the original boundaries. We have talked over the years many times about annexations, whether it be the west side or Castaic, and it's always come down to the same thing. The county usually has had no problem with letting the city annex all of the residents.
Right.
But when it came to the marketplace, Six Flags, the industrial center, everything that provided an economic base, well,
Yeah.
they're maybe not too keen on letting that go. And that always puts us in a spot that how do you annex 50,000 new residents and services without any type of economic, offset to come along with it. And that's always been, the challenge and the discussion. Most of the city's growth and our population, yes, it has been organic, but much of our growth in the last 10 years has been through annexations. And the next big one will be Tesoro. Tesoro will be annexed into the city probably in 2022. So that'll put our population, close to 250, without again any new construction going on. And then the last piece that I didn't really talk about is the whole Whitaker Vermite property. That's really the last 1,000 acres of inside the city that has yet to be developed. Recent appraisals put that property at $250 million. So anybody that's going to want to, develop that area, they're going to have to look at a real comprehensive one-time project, and hopefully that'll eventually be a Princessa will punch through there in Wiley and make that connection. So I'm sure you have a lot of clients from Circle J at that point as soon as that pops through. So the question about annexations, they're always there, but they'll never happen until after the projects are developed. And that's always been the push because the city's a little more restricted than the county. And so developers would rather develop in the county, get entitled in the county, and then come to the city as opposed to going through the city process. So I don't see U-Haul Ranch getting any type of annexation for decades. Steve.
What can you tell us about Cemex and solar panels over here on the building?
So both are still kind of active litigation. So there's minimal that I can say about those. The solar panels is something that the city filed a lawsuit on because, like all of you, we woke up one day and saw the panels on that hill. And the developer used, or the owner, the argument they used is that property is manufactured home, mobile home property, which is governed by the state, not by the city. So they felt they had every right to put those up there without even notifying the city. So we've obviously been in litigation with them. The courts have issued an initial ruling that have asked the city and the defendant to come back. So we're discussing settlement and coming back. Cemex also, again, there was a court ruling against the federal government that could theoretically allow Cemex to once again begin construction of 20 years of gravel mining, putting it on the 14 freeway. That shouldn't be a problem for anybody, right? Hundreds of trucks a day for 20 years. So I think the federal government's looking at whether or not they're going to appeal that ruling as well. But certainly something that could have a monumental impact on our community if Cemex is ultimately approved and begins with their project. Yes.
Do you plan on going to where Santa Clarita River Lake exposition, if you will?
So I've had a few meetings with the proposer of that, and so I feel I'm up to speed on it. So I don't need to go back. For those of you that are wondering about the question, there's going to be a community meeting next month about an idea that someone has that would basically dam, if you will, part of the Santa Clarita River to create a lake amenity kind of behind the auto dealers there by, Hart baseball fields, behind Bridgeport, kind of their area. It's modeled after, I think it's, what is this, Tempe Lake or something in Arizona. There's one in Oklahoma City as well. So, again, it's thank you for that question. That was an individual's idea, and I appreciate anybody that has an idea to try to improve our community, but it is not a city endorsed, proposed, sponsored event.
Second question real quick, can you tell us where we stand on Blackhawk Studios coming to Santa Clarita?
So, all I know is, I don't think anything has been, I've only had one conversation with them, so I know of the concept and the idea. I don't know if anything has been submitted into planning yet. So again, there's a proposal to take along Newhall Avenue, past Santa Clarita Canyon, to that area there, and to move it and make it a Blackhawk Studios to drink. So
26 sounds big.
it's a big deal. Yeah, it has impacts. So again, I don't know if they've actually submitted anything to planning yet, but I would imagine that's something I'll see in the next couple of years. Thanks.
I actually get a lot of questions about the animal ordinances that do with backyard chickens. I'm like, is that in the Santa Clarita, is the lot size restrictions, is the lot size HOA?
So I would have to double check because we don't have our own animal control.
Chickens in the backyard. Oh, I get a lot of questions about backyard chickens, you know I do. Chickens, okay.
So I honestly don't know. Like I said, it's like our health department. We don't have a city health department. We use the county. Just like with animal control, we contract with LA County Animal Control. So, but I know there are limitations and restrictions based on where you are. Obviously Sand Canyon, Santa Clarita Canyon, who have different, because they're special standards district areas, so you're going to have more flexibility than you will, in Alta Vista where I heard.
Such as turkeys roaming around the road.
Well, that's
Those are happy turkeys.
turkeys are the Happy Valley turkeys get a special exemption.
Those are some happy turkeys.
I know they are very aggressive. They are protected. The Happy Valley turkeys are a protected species.
First one is while we're changing, what's going on with that whole thing?
I'm not sure, what do you mean about it?
There's been a little bit of a challenge with one of the properties, and access to Walter Canyon and development there. And then the other question I have is extending out West in north on Coachella. What, if anything, has been done about that?
So, I don't know, honestly, and, like I said, I live in Happy Valley, so I haven't heard anything about the Wildwood, canyon issue, so, I can't help you on that. The issue then on Bouquet, that's obviously a concern is, the county has, had discussions about changing Camp Scott and Scudder, into a maximum, facility, because what's happened, and again, this is where you get frustrated with the state, is, I don't totally blame the county, but legislation was signed a year ago that basically eliminated all of the state juvenile facilities, which then pushes all of those, inmates into the county system. And, these aren't just, 14, 15-year-old kids. These are, people that were sentenced up to the age, up to the age of 25 for violent, serious crimes. And so counties all across the state have been left scrambling because the state said they had to be closed within a year of the bill. And so now counties are trying to find, how we're going to accept you know, some of these very violent, the most violent juvenile offenders, you know, where do they go? Where are they going to be housed? And Scott and Scudder are high on the list of the county of LA County to transition that and move that into a, you know, a maximum security facility, which, you know, Camp Scott and Scudder have been around longer than the city has. You know, and they've been part of the community, you know, for generations, and very few issues over the years, you know, because of
You're bringing hardened criminals.
the level of kids
got
that have been
families
put
right there.
into that, you know, that program. Whereas this is a fundamental change that is very concerning. It's putting it, you know, hundreds of meters away from existing residents.
Absolutely. And
And
schools.
right, as well as, you know, so
seniors.
we're obviously fighting that in the city, you know, as well, pushing back against the county that there are many other
People believe.
options, you know, that transition. So we'll keep pushing on it. Yes, sir.
A clarification on the park improvements, are they gonna take away a lane to make it an HOA, or are they gonna add a lane?
No, I think they're punching the HOA all the way through. So there won't be, I'd have to read the metro report.
Including us.
I think they're converting an existing.
That whole area is gonna get
Or
really
the,
bad. The crime rate there is gonna
yeah, you
be
can't
really
really, there's not
bad.
gonna be, there's no room to add. So they'll be just converting.
Just because of who
No,
it's
it's gonna
bringing
be
in.
right, I agree.
The visitors, not the people inside, but the visitors that are coming.
Steve, what up? The question is, you know, because of new state regulations,
ADUs?
you know, you can convert your garages or others into ADUs, auxiliary dwelling units, without going through the permitting process or going through the same standard, if you're a certain size. So I don't know, you know, I remember looking at, the numbers have increased every year, and I think as more people become aware of the law, you'll see that number increase. So I don't have an exact number, Steve, from, but I remember at the report when we were taking up the bill, they outlined, and we could see growth. All right.
All right,